NPD is the acronym that you'll hear again and again that stands for New Product Development. And most companies follow a very, very similar process for developing new products. And I have to start off by saying what we're talking about now is what's commonly referred to as marketing driven new product development. There also is R&D, research and development driven NPD, and we'll talk about that later on. But let's focus on a very, very systematic approach to developing new products, which is often called the new product development funnel. And it's called the new product development funnel because at each stage it gets narrower. There are fewer things that you're talking about. You start at the top of the funnel with lots and lots and lots of ideas, and then out at the very, very bottom of the funnel you get new products, hopefully commercially successful new products. So let's go ahead and look at the stages of the new product development process one at a time, starting with the new product strategy. You don't want to create products in a vacuum, just nilly-willy. You want them to follow some sort of very, very specific strategy. For example, there probably are certain parameters for PepsiCo when they're developing products for their Pepsi-Cola unit. I'm sure it's got to be a beverage product. It's got to be a soft beverage product. Sometimes they're even more focused. It's got to be a soda product, and so on. Also, there will often be hurdles to overcome, such as it's got to have sales of X, it's got to be manufactured on our existing equipment, it's got to be distributed through our existing distribution methods, and so on. So we start with an overall strategy to put some parameters around what it is that we're trying to develop. Next comes the idea generation stage, and this is wide open brainstorming. Let's come up with as many ideas as we can, and this can take any and all forms, as brainstorming often does. This can be specific brainstorming sessions. You might open it up to employees and say, hey, who's got ideas? Sometimes companies that are a little bit dry at the well will utilize new product development marketing firms to help them with this. Sometimes they'll ask consumers. At this stage, you're pretty wide open, just a whole bunch of different ideas, and then you need to want to start narrowing down those ideas. That is often called the idea screening stage, where you make sure that things fit in. You get rid of the wild, crazy things. You know how brainstorming works. There is no such thing as a bad idea. But then as you start to screen them a little bit more, you realize, oh yeah, that is a bad idea. So things that don't fit get tossed out here. Then we move on to the business analysis stage. Now, again, notice the funnel is getting narrower and narrower. So at each stage, we get rid of things. We're dealing with fewer things. At the business analysis stage, you do a very, very quick and dirty business analysis. You try to project, okay, this idea, here's what I think revenues will be. Here's what I think the costs will be. Here's what I think the target market will be. Now, remember, there is no product yet. This is all in the concept stage. This is all still an idea. So when I say business analysis, this is a very crude, very back of envelope kind of analysis. However, it still is useful in helping decide that, oh yeah, that idea, maybe that doesn't quite fit in. So we're going deeper into the funnel. More and more ideas get tossed out. We haven't developed or started to develop any products yet. But once we've passed this hurdle, once we've gone through the idea generation, we've gone through the screening, we've gone through the business analysis, and we still think, yeah, we like this idea, now it's time to start really working on developing the idea, and that's where we get into research and development, product development. And the development stage can very often be the very, very longest stage because, and again, we're talking marketing-driven new product development. At this stage, we will go to the R&D folks and we will give them their marching orders and we'll say, okay, here's exactly what we want. Here are the parameters of the product. Here's what we'd like it to deliver on. And then the R&D people go off into the lab and work away trying to develop what it is that marketing wants. This will often be a back and forth iterative stage. R&D will come back and they'll say, hey, I think we've got it. And marketing will maybe do some research. And then they'll come back and they say, no, we don't quite have it yet. Go back and tweak this, especially for things like food and beverage products where there can be flavor development. This can often take, quite a while. It can be months. It can be years sometimes. At some point, you think you have a viable product, and now it's ready to see, do we really have a viable product? And many firms will then take the product into test market. Don't be fooled by the term test market. When you are in test market, you have a commercially viable product, or you hope you have a commercially viable product because you are putting it in the market. You're just putting it in a very, very limited market. That's the thing about test market. When you put something into a test market, you put it into limited geography to try to see, is this going to work? The good side of going into a test market is you're able to fail cheaply, as they say. If it doesn't work, you haven't lost a lot. Maybe this product requires a new production line to be constructed, and you don't want to commit to those investment dollars until you're sure it's a viable product. But the thing is, once you go into test market, you are in the commercial market, and all of your competitors are going to see that. And that's one of the concerns about test marketing. In fact, we'll talk separately about test marketing later on. So many firms choose not to go into test marketing, but to go to full-blown commercialization. That is, an individual choice. Full-blown commercialization means we are now introducing the product to the market everywhere that we plan to sell it, and hopefully we have a commercially successful new product. Now that we've got a product in the market, we want to get the target consumer through the process, and many times people will use the acronym AIDA to describe what has to happen with the consumer, and AIDA stands for awareness. You've got to get the consumer aware. Interest, you've got to develop their interest. Desire, you got to get them to want it. And then action, you got to get them to buy it. So during the introduction stage of the new product, you want to develop that awareness, get that into interest, convert that to desire, and then finally get the action. Many people talk about the adoption pyramid, how products are adopted. It's a little bit more extensive than the AIDA concept, but as you can see, it's very, very similar. You've got to get their awareness, and that's usually done with massive advertising. You need to generate their interest, and maybe that means it's teaser advertising. You want to get them to consider it or evaluate it, so you give them the information that they need. Of course, they need to try it. Many times at this stage, marketers will use often called trial devices like samples, trial size packages, demonstrations. Of course, you want to get them to buy it, adoption, so make the product available, and then get them to repeat confirmation, reinforce the consumer's choice through advertising, sales promotion, and other communications. Some people are very, very interested in trying new things and they'll jump on it right away. Some people are much more reticent and they'll wait to see if something is going to be successful. That leads to what's often referred to the category of adopters. Those people are going to jump on it very, very early. Those are innovators. And then very, very quickly, so-called early adopters will jump on the bandwagon. Then we'll get what's often referred to as the early majority. Now we've gotten to about half of the potential customers. Then we'll get to the late majority, and then finally the laggards. One thing that we want to be careful for as we introduce new products is if we think that this product is going to have legs, in other words, if it's going to last for a while, or if it's just going to be a fad. Fads spike very, very quickly, and then they fade away very, very quickly. Whenever people talk about fads, the most classic fad was a product that came out called the Pet Rock. It was a hugely successful product for about 10 minutes, and then it quickly went away. But for a very short period of time, it seemed like almost everybody bought a Pet Rock. Yeah, don't ask me. It sounds kind of crazy. I remember when Rubik's Cube was introduced. And when Rubik's Cube was introduced, I thought to myself, oh, I bet we have a fad product here. Because when it was first introduced, there was Rubik's Cube mania, and everybody ran out and bought a Rubik's Cube and was trying to play around with it, see if they could get everything to all line up. The reason why I thought Rubik's Cube was going to be a fad product was it was very, very similar to a product that came out a number of years ago called Instant Insanity. And Instant Insanity definitely proved to be a fad product. Again, it seemed like almost everybody ran out and bought it. The trick was you had to line up, the four colors in a row. Very, very quickly, people lost interest in it and it completely went away. Well, Rubik's Cube was not a fad. Rubik's Cube is still around. It's been around for 40 years, definitely not a fad product. The difference is Instant Insanity took about 5 minutes to figure out the trick, and then after 5 minutes, anybody could do it. So it wasn't very complicated. There wasn't much of a challenge there. Rubik's Cube, that is still a challenge for a lot of people, and so it's been a very, very successful new product. What we've been talking about is so-called marketing-driven R&D, marketing-driven new product development. There's also R&D driven new product development. And this is when you don't give R&D their marching orders, you just let them tinker around in the lab, see if they can come up with something. Probably the most successful R&D driven consumer product of the current period would be Post-it notes. This is a very, very successful billion-dollar brand from 3M. There was nobody in the marketing department that went to R&D and said, hey, I think if you made these notes that had adhesive on them that you could stick to things, but then you could take them off and then put them onto other things and they'd still stick. I think we could sell a whole bunch of those. No, this wasn't marketing driven. This was just a chemist in the lab playing around with adhesives, actually trying to solve a problem that he had with regard to notes in his church hymnal, and came up with this very, very unique adhesive that proved to be incredibly commercially viable. But for a success story like that, there's an even more cautionary tale of the downsides of R&D driven new product development. The same company, one company, came up with these three incredible products. The same company came up with the mouse, the computer mouse, the graphical user interface for an operating system, and the first spreadsheet. Now think, what company was responsible for these three incredible products? The computer mouse, the graphical user interface, or the spreadsheet? One company. They all came out of the same company's R&D lab, and that company was Xerox. And they all came out of the Palo Alto Research Center, the Palo Alto Research Center being Xerox's main R&D lab in Silicon Valley. Now, whether or not the graphical user interface came out of PARC is a matter of debate. Apple veterans claim that that's a bunch of bull. Xerox veterans claim that no, they came up with the GUI first. It really doesn't matter. The key thing is that R&D left to its own might come up with some interesting things that the company is never able to successfully commercialize. And Xerox was never able to successfully commercialize any of those, though other people